fellow.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hold Up, the show where we dive deep inside your childhood nostalgia, pull the movies from your past out to see if they truly hold up. Today, we're investigating things with two great detectives themselves, Kyle and Andrew.
Yo.
Well, pump the brakes. Hold on. Roll that back. Two great? No. One magnificent and one very mediocre.
That
Explain.
being you, the mediocre one, of course.
I'm surprised you even gave him mediocre. I thought you were going to go with something.
You
No,
see, Andrew, and that's
he's-
what I'm
he's
talking.
the mediocre
you see,
one,
Andrew,
excuse
you see, Andrew,
me.
and that's what I'm talking about, Andrew.
He got
you see
his
there,
degree from
you see what I'm
UTI,
saying?
Universal
You see what I'm
Technical
saying there,
Institute in
Andrew? We
Forensic
both
Science.
agreed that you are the one who is below average.
And hey,
You
we
can't
all
prove that.
we all know that Kyle got his degree from Grand Canyon University.
It is GCU
Oh,
all the
yeah,
way.
sorry, the antelopes. Is that what they are?
I don't even know.
Pronghorns.
I thought they were an online institute only. For a very
They
long
are
time.
significantly online. What is something that you've investigated, Kyle?
I investigated when somebody put a note on Erica and I's door that Oscar, the small, maybe 5-pound, decrepit, ancient, old, tiny toy poodle, was making so much noise that it was really irking our upstairs neighbors. So I assume it was our upstairs neighbors. I investigated the entire apartment floor and I brought the note with me. I knocked on at least 15 people's door and I said, "Did you put this on my door?" And they said, no, I didn't. Or they weren't home or something. And I went to our upstairs neighbors right above us and I said, "Did you put this on our door?" And he looks at it and he goes, No. And I was like, "You had to read it to know that you didn't put it on our door?" So you put something on our door? He's like, "No, I didn't put anything on your door." I was like, "Yeah, you little fucking dweeb. Roll you up and smoke you like a little cigarette, twerp." So I investigated that. There was no conclusive evidence to say one way or another, but I think it was him. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, he probably got COVID though.
Did you give it to him?
Probably.
Yeah, I figured.
Great work. The reason we talk about detective work is we watched The Great Mouse Detective, and this was probably one of our most requested films, I think.
Easily. And this is one that I went into and I was like, yeah, this is going to be
A trip down memory lane, baby.
It is. And it was, but it also wasn't.
Well, before we get into it, Kyle, I want you to explain your energy levels today using detective terminology.
Well, I would say when I came upon the scene, I noticed there was a broken seal on the door into this moment. And when I arrived inside, I saw numerous signs of struggle, a struggle for something to make sense of the world that we're in. But really all I saw was just pools of blood everywhere on the floor and a singular murder weapon. And that was a phone with TikTok open on it.
He's doing great. That's great.
That's the end.
Yeah,
That's the end.
You really took me someplace there.
That's the end.
I
of
was
that.
transported. Wow.
He took you to brain damage is where he took you.
I thought you were going to bring up the little plate, the shattered plate for a second. That's
No.
what I thought you were going to
I don't want to die.
Oh, my God. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood experience with The Great Mouse Detective.
I mean, I watched it quite a bit. It was in that Disney collection of like Robin Hood and like Peter Pan, The Rescuers, and Oliver and Company, and you know, I could go on and on. It was one of those cartoons that you had in your collection that you picked out more than once or twice on any given weekday night. I remember enjoying it. I remember it scaring me, but I remember genuinely liking it. And you know, you might as well say loved it when I was a kid.
And it has that specific animated style,
Yes.
too, that we all grew up with.
It's
And-
it's you know, it's from '86 or whatever, but it feels like it's from like the
70s,
'60s or
70s,
whatever.
yeah. Kyle, tell me a little bit about your youthful experience with The Great Mouse Detective, other than being able to tell me your energy levels in detective terminology.
You don't lose us this time.
Well,
We've already lost the audience. It's gone.
well, much like Andrew, I remember this one being scary. I remember being scared by this film. Maybe even overwhelmed to the point where I might cover my face at certain points. I remember I felt bad for the little tiny mouse, the little girl mouse.
Olivia.
I felt I was like, oh, she's got it so rough. And I remember there being a lot more like mortal danger in this movie than there actually was. but there was still quite a bit of it.
The stakes seemed pretty high.
They were high, but things just didn't. We'll get there. But there was some stuff that I found to be lacking. And I don't recall that from when I watched it as a child. But also, the last time I did watch this, I think, might have been when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't think I've watched it outside of that. So this is a real good one to kind of really see.
It's probably been about 20-something years.
Easily, yeah. I'm the same way. I have not seen this movie since I was a kid, and this is one that I didn't watch a lot.
Yeah.
I think I saw this maybe a couple of times. So we spoke about Don Bluth films. That was kind of where I gravitated towards. If I was watching like animated movies, I was watching stuff like The Fox and the Hound. I think that was my favorite.
That was my favorite as a kid as well.
And I would watch that one, and I watched, to Andrew's point, there was so many of these animated films at the time. Fievel Goes West was another one of my favorites. Yeah. So maybe one we get to later on down the road, but I didn't recall much when this got brought up. I know it's a fan favorite out there. I know a lot of people love this movie. So I was just kind of going in with fresh new eyes, because as a kid, I watched it when I was really young. I was probably like 6, 7 years old when I watched it. We didn't even own it on VHS. This was one of the few that I didn't have.
Rented? Or
yeah, I think rented or watched on TV, maybe like Disney Channel or something. It didn't escape me. I knew of it, and it's basically Sherlock Holmes.
Basically, yeah.
So it wasn't like foreign material. It's just not one that I was like, love that movie. Can't wait to watch it. But
yeah. But it seems to be like that for a lot of people, though. Seems
Yeah,
like a lot of people are like, oh my God, you remember Great Mouse Detective, right?
like it's a deep cut or
Like
something.
like it's something, yeah. It's just like, I mean, it is
kind of a deep cut.
but it's a little too deep. And in a way that I didn't find great, but it's definitely a heavy childhood movie. I'd be surprised how many people who recommended this to us have watched it since
recently.
Yes.
They had to have been.
I don't even think they probably haven't even seen it as teenagers.
Yeah, it's probably since they were like 5 or 6 or somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Worst case, like 8.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe.
Again, when the memory is still,
And
fuzzy.
we're 90s kids, but I remember growing up, the Disney Vault became a thing. Does anybody remember that? When, before streaming kids, Disney used to re-release their classics like The Great Mouse Detective, The Rescuers, Fox and the Hound, Cinderella, Snow White. They would release them every 6 to 8 months for a limited time. So you could rent them on this new VHS or buy them in the store, but they were gouged up. I remember they were super expensive.
Like $23.
And there was like a 2 or 3 month window you could buy these movies, and if you passed that window, you couldn't get it again.
Yeah.
So unless you already owned it, you weren't going to see it.
Yeah.
And then they didn't show them Disney didn't show these movies on TV a lot because they were making money in their home market sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly forgot this was a Disney movie until it came up at the beginning. I was like, oh damn, that's right.
The reason a lot of people don't remember a lot of these movies or haven't seen them since they were a kid was because Disney made them rare so that they could sell them. Like Disney did the Buffalo Trace thing before Buffalo Trace did.
I will also say this movie came out when the Disney brand was not very strong. This was before the resurgence with Michael Eisner.
You're right.
It was the 80s. This was 86, I think. This was before like Little Mermaid and Lion King and stuff like that. Disney was not a strong brand, and they were not doing well.
Yeah, because they fell off.
Fell off hard.
Especially after Walt died. Yeah. And
it took them a while to get back.
And their animation style they'd kind of lost their animation style. They kind of went to more like, they were trying to fall into an early CG style animation. So there was a period of time. Because there was a movie, it was The Black Cauldron, wasn't it? That almost tanked Disney for a while.
Yeah, but I'd be curious to go back and watch that one because I enjoyed those books and those movies when I was a kid.
It was ahead of its time.
Yes, it was dark.
I know a lot of people love that movie now as adults, so that would be an interesting one to go back on. But it really hurt Disney for a while, and then to your point, Michael Eisner comes around and puts a lot of money in the parks and invest into the animation department. We get Lion King, and then that's all she wrote from there.
And I will say the director of this movie, he did a lot of the big ones, such as Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Princess and the Frog, Moana. Ron Clements was his name. He was a team of directors, but like he was like the the
Producing
guy,
the
but he
Frog, wow.
did quite a few over
Yeah.
the course of 20, 30 years, and big ones, huge ones for Disney. So this one was, no different in that regard. But I don't think it had the effect that some of these other movies we're talking about in terms of boosting Disney's presence and brand. So
Andrew, while we're talking about the success of Disney, let's talk about how successful this movie did.
okay, it had a budget of about $14 million,
Which was pretty standard for an animated film at
Yeah.
the time. Like, I don't know how high or low that is for 86 animated film.
Yeah.
But so 14 million.
It doesn't give me a weekly opening number.
Were they not
unfortunately.
tracking it back
I
then?
don't think so.
Okay.
And it's interesting because this movie, they talk about the gross total in two separate categories: original release and 92 re-release. That's what you were talking about just a second ago.
Yep.
So the original release was only about 25 million altogether. So,
Still
11 million more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Depending on marketing too, you may break even on that.
And then the re-release, which I think is what made it more popular for our era,
Which we're going to dive into that.
was about 13 million. So altogether, 38 million in total.
So they doubled it.
Yeah. They made their money.
Doubled it and then
It's-
some.
This is definitely before the time of like blockbuster animated films.
Yeah.
You can tell from this movie.
I wanted to see how that did, but I do want to talk. Kyle, I want to get your perspective on this. How do you feel about us 90s kids growing up, but having a knowledge of all the 60s, 70s, 80s Disney movies?
When Toy Story came out, that was like a big thing. That was when there was a monumental shift happening in film. That's when we had the heyday of the literally primetime Tom Hanks. That's Daniel Day-Lewis. This is like prime time for like movies shifting into a more elevated fashion, like an elevated like platform, an elevated media. And I think that when it came to the animated films, like Toy Story really like blew everybody out of the water. And it was, I think, again, Great Mouse Detective, spoiler, is pretty much just a kids movie. There's not a lot of like adult stuff going on there aside from like suggestive use of tobacco or alcohol.
Yeah.
Toy Story incorporated like adult themes in there and things that kids could definitely latch onto, but so could their parents. So it made it more of like an event to take everybody together to that movie when it came to that. And I think that like to live through that when we were growing up, you could go see those movies or go, to the movie theater and maybe rent them. But like before that, there's, Snow White, Seven Dwarfs, there's Cinderella, there's like old Disney movies, but unless it's Fantasia, it's not really great,
Disney was down, like Andrew said, so all we had was kind of the classics before they got really bad. And then there were some spurts in the 80s, I think, where we got some good movies. Mm-hmm. I do think there's a lot of older animated Disney movies, because of the animation style alone, are worth revisiting, because we don't see that animation style. It's almost like a relic in time.
Yeah.
And Pixar changed the game a little bit, but Disney wasn't releasing all these animated movies. Pixar wasn't really a thing at the time. So all we had was the classics to go back and watch. If we wanted to watch an animated kids movie, we had to watch those.
That's all there was. There was nothing else.
I'm not sure, but I think kids today are lost on the old Disney movies that we grew up with. They're always going to be timeless. Like, you're going to see them at Disney World or when you go to the parks, right? Like, you see the merchandise and you see the characters come out. But as far as like kids knowing these movies, unless their parents are showing them to you, they're not out there, which is sad, because like I said, Fox and the Hound is
Classic.
still up there.
It's
It's one of my favorite movies.
I watched it a couple of years ago, and it still hit me.
Yeah.
Right here.
They really knew how to do it. And
Yeah. And Robin Hood's a great one. I
Robin
watched
Hood
that
is also
recently.
good, yeah.
Oh my, the music, I fucking love Robin Hood.
yeah,
man.
and to Kyle's point, I think after the 60s and 70s of those movies, they kind of like went to making just kids tales,
kids.
and kind of like, I think, and that probably was the death of Walt.
yeah.
He had a good vision on connecting animation through different ages, and we lost that a little bit.
Yeah, it just turned into just kid fodder.
And I want to say something about this movie. You know, I said it wasn't on par with Little Mermaid or, you know, Lion King, yada, yada, yada. And that, while that's true, it is still really credited with keeping Disney afloat after the Black Cauldron fiasco. Like, Disney was in a shit spot. This movie came out and kind of gave them some surface to, you know, live on and rely on. So it did serve a purpose, and it wasn't like a flop or, you know, worthless movie by any means. It did keep them afloat and did keep them from essentially going under.
Before we dive in, I do want to bring up some history too. So I know I mentioned that this is basically Sherlock Holmes, but this movie is based on the book that Sherlock Holmes was based on.
It was based on the book that Sherlock Holmes was based on?
Yeah. So it's kind of the precursor to Sherlock Holmes. And we talk about the legacy of this film. This was the first animated film to use computer-generated images.
Oh,
interesting. So
that's worth mentioning.
In an animated form. So, and I think I know where it falls in. I think the clock tower scene, which we'll get into, I think that was full-on computer
Had to have
CGI,
been.
yeah.
I mean, it was well done,
Si,
but
senor.
had to have been.
But let's dive right in. Kyle, where does this movie open up?
There's a first of all, the score that we open up with. The score in this movie is very good.
Very good.
Very good score. But we open up on a clothed figure kind of walking down the street while also getting cuts to a toy maker making toys in his shop with his little daughter. And these are mice, by the way. These are mice.
Not humans.
Not humans. Human characteristics and qualities, but they're mice. So basically this man is making toys, and this clothed figure is like hobbling, and there's like this, you're going back and forth between this happy scene and this kind of ominous scene. It's back and forth, and the child is like talking with her dad, and they're having a fun time, and something happens where we cut over to like the window, and there's just like this face full of teeth and like red eyes, and it's
horrifying.
Very scary as a child, like to see that. Very scary. It turns out to be a bat. The father hides the child, and the bat just takes the father away. Just that's that.
Just kidnaps.
Just kidnaps the father. We don't know why.
And the bat is terrifying, and it's peg-legged, and yeah, that was one of the main things I did remember. I was like, oh yeah, the bat, and that scared the shit out of me as a child.
Yeah, out of this whole movie, watching it back, I can be like, okay, yeah, that part definitely was still scary.
I mean, this is for a young kid, and that scene was awfully terrifying. But like, you know, we get that scene. The dad's gone. The little girl's like left on her own now. And then what do we get next, Andrew?
This plump mouse gets
Very plump.
Very plump.
dropped off from a taxi on the side of the street, and you know, you learn that he is just getting back from war or whatever. He was over in Afghanistan, and mind you, this is 1897. That is the actual date that it takes place.
A lot of movies don't do that.
And he's just walking down the street, and he hears someone whimpering in this like shoe, and he goes and inspects it, and it's young Olivia, the girl whose father was abducted by the bat.
Yeah, and if you haven't picked up, like, this character is pretty much Watson.
Yeah,
Like, basically.
Dawson, Watson.
Dawson Watson.
Yes,
Yeah.
his name is
Yes,
Dawson.
he's talking about his time in the regimental army, and you're like, oh, okay, he's a veteran. Yeah, this is Watson. He's a doctor. He's Watson. Okay, cool. We got that figured out. But he's just a
David Q. Dawson, to be specific. But
Quincy.
So then he meets the little girl, and the little girl's like holding up a newspaper article where she finds out that this detective named Basil, spelled Basil,
Basil. If you say it, Basil. Just like that. Basil.
And he has
Basil of
solved-
Baker Street.
solved this big mystery. So she's looking for this detective so she can help find her father. It's simple as that. And so he helps take her to Basil's house
On Baker Street.
On Baker Street, which we didn't get the saxophone. I was very upset.
We got a
by that.
violin, though.
Yeah, but it would be great if that violin had played Baker Street
Wouldn't have
as
been-
like a good little.
Some inconsistencies in the timeline there, but I agree with you. It would have been nice.
No, just as a fun little Easter egg. You know, you don't have to like sync it up to time.
You're right.
Like, yeah, it's
You
just
could use like a clarinet or something to make it even sound a little bit older.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
like he's just playing Baker Street on the on the violin. It would have been funny
For sure.
Well, they get to the house and they find this sweet, I guess, maid, right?
I guess she is Basil's maid, or what I guess is that what you'd call her position? She
I
makes some
guess.
food and
His mom
keeps things cleanly and tidy. So
At this point, we can talk about the animation style. They're living in the human world.
yes,
These little places that they're going in are built into the side of human buildings. So the scale is not like, oh, we're in a mouse's world. We're in a human world.
Yes, and that's something that I think is a ding on this movie, in my opinion. I think there was a lot of like missed opportunities with that. It's not. To be fair, it's not pretending to be that kind of movie, but like they could have done a better job with some. Like the criminal hangout is cute, but it's like it's in an old beer keg, which is like that's cool, but like. It's not as creative as something like Ratatouille or something like that.
I still think it's kind of cool.
I like it. I like the idea of like what's happening in our shoes. Oh no, there's a missing little orphan mouse.
It's like an entire world that we don't know.
That exists right under us. Yeah. We did that world a lot when we were kids, and now we don't do it at all. I guess it's kind of a nostalgia push for me. Like, hey, I really would love to see movies do that. You know, that's what made Osmosis Jones fun. What little made Osmosis Jones fun, but
Agreed.
I didn't hate the world. And the animation here, I can't speak enough. The animation is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like, well done. I think some of it's rotoscoped.
maybe.
I can't speak for animation. We'll have a guest later on down the road that can give us some animation insight. But
Please, we need an education.
we do. But, Andrew, so they go into this Baker Street house. They finally meet the detective. Now describe the detective for me.
He can't be bothered. He is very much in his own head, I don't even remember what he was talking about when he walked in, but he wouldn't shut up, and Olivia...
He was pointing a gun everywhere.
He was literally pointing a firearm at people.
He's very full of himself, and like it doesn't seem like he has the right to be full of himself at this juncture.
He hasn't done anything to prove anything to us.
No,
he's
feels
smart.
like a heroin addict.
He's very...
He feels very autistic.
He feels compulsive.
Again, I keep
like he's
using
just
that word, but like he just is.
He's not a very likable character.
He's aloof and
he's an asshole.
Yeah,
He's really mean.
He's kind of intelligent, like, because he's running this experiment on this gun, and he shoots it into a bunch of pillows, which would make him
that'll stop it. Yeah,
not intelligent at all.
And then it turns out that the bullets don't match, the ballistics don't match, or whatever. And, it's all for nothing. And he's distraught and can't be bothered, so he goes, sits on his chair and starts playing his violin or whatever.
And he's telling them that he's trying to find this crime boss.
Yeah.
Ratton, is that his name?
Ratigan.
Yeah.
Ratigan.
My memory's
Ratigan.
And then finally, I guess Olivia speaks up and talks about how her dad was abducted by this bat-like creature or whatever, and then that piques his interest.
Which is funny. It's not a bat-like creature. It's legitimately just a bat.
It's just a bat, yeah. A bat-like creature, I say that because it has a fucking peg leg and a foot, so I don't know.
It's just a maimed bat.
Yeah, but I don't know many bats that can walk and crawl. But again, I don't know many mice that can do the same, so...
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, and this piques his interest because he knows that this bat is like Ratigan's like henchman. He's like, oh, wait, you could be of use to me. Oh, now I'll listen to you. Now your woes are of importance to me because it might help me find this Ratigan creature. And I guess
because
it's just his nemesis. It's like Moriarty. It's just his nemesis.
And he knows Ratigan's up to like no good, and he's gonna evil guy. And then he realizes he kind of does the only detective work he does in the whole scene is figure out that Dawson served in the military.
Yes.
And
he could tell by the stitching on his sleeve because it was like cat intestine and it was something, that's literally what he said. He knew that he was in Afghanistan and knew that he was a surgeon, and that was it. So.
He was like, "Are you up for adventure?" And the little girl was like, "Yeah, I am." And he's like, "No, you can't go with us.
No, you're a fucking child.
Stay
put."
She just goes anyway.
Yeah, good for her.
So now they're off to try to find their dad. And then I think that's where we're introduced to Ratigan, right?
Yes.
So, Kyle, how are we introduced to him?
Well, I think we see him when he comes into the toy maker's shop that is now his pseudo shop because he's been abducted. And he's coming in, he's making something. You don't know what he's making. He's making some kind of robot or something. And he's like telling him how it needs to be done in a certain time. And the toy maker goes, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And Ratigan goes, yeah, you are. But he goes, no, I'm not. And he pours, what does he do? Pour coffee on top of it. And it fucks the whole thing up.
Yeah, and then he's like threatening his daughter.
He's like, yeah, I'd hate to see your daughter have to come here too. That'd suck, right?
And at this point, it is clear that he is voiced by Vincent Price.
Yes.
Which is a horror legend. And Vincent Price does a really good job with his voice acting here. He has a very unique voice, which gives it a lot of that kind of schlocky horror to it.
It's definitely very tacky horror.
Yeah.
But like
in a good way.
It's in a good way, yeah. It's not. This is one of the shining parts of the
like
movie. I would
over
say.
the top kind of villain,
But
kind
like
of very
I would
flamboyant.
say, I didn't really like the animation for Ratigan. I think if we were trying to make him a little bit more scary, he was a little too like
He
I
looked
don't
like
know
a
the right word.
business leader.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he
He's
kind of.
Why don't we talk about his physical description? Like
he's like he's got a
thick
beard.
chest.
Apparently,
he's a
thick-chested.
fucking rat, by the
He's
way.
a rat, but you're not supposed to call him a rat
supposed to call him that. He doesn't like it.
He'll feed you to his cat.
Huge barrel chest, big protruding nose, nasty teeth. Looked like he had some small, dwindly legs on top of
He
that barrel
skips leg
chest.
day.
He skips leg
for
day,
sure.
for sure.
He had like a toupee, right?
Yeah,
like his
he had-
hair looked.
Or
like
I think his hair just was combed over. It was just slicked back, and
that's what he wanted you to think, Kyle. It was a toupee.
Yeah.
Hair plugs.
Yeah,
But his his animation. I just think for as scary as his character needs to be, it just didn't hit.
yeah. He's supposed to be this like really demanding threat, and he just kind of felt like a goofy.
He felt
He was
kinda
very
like-
flamboyant.
Very flamboyant. He felt,
I am Ratigan.
Just like that.
exactly what I say.
Yeah.
say.
It wasn't exactly like
No.
evil upon looking at
And
him.
Vincent Price always has that flamboyant kind of voice because he's always like fiddlesticks. He can't do anything super serious or like demanding.
But for the animation that they have for him, it matches up
Vincent
perfectly.
Price.
For the character that he needs to be, no, it doesn't. It
they
doesn't. It's a no for me.
they had an idea of what they wanted, and they pulled it off of what they wanted. Now whether it could work better in another way is up for grabs there. But
Yeah.
so we're introduced to Ratigan. We know now that he does have her dad held captive to build him this robotic thing that we're not sure what is. And then I can't recall what happens next, Andrew.
Ratigan has his little meeting with his henchmen. Mm-hmm. I think that might be.
And that's where the
next.
song Ratigan comes in.
Yeah, and he
And
sings
he's-
a little song. And
Ratigan, oh Ratigan, na na na
And it just-
na, na.
And this kind of mirrored Batman and Robin to me, where Freeze is like dance, dance, and like all of his like little henchmen are dancing around. They don't really want to, and they're like ah.
Yeah.
And then I think one of them gets too drunk, right?
yeah, he's been drinking heavily, and he
And they're
calls
all
him.
they're all mice too,
Yeah.
except for one
There's a
turtle.
turtle. There's a
that
fucking
somehow,
turtle.
yeah, that shellless turtle.
Yes, but he accidentally calls Ratigan a rat, and
that sets him off.
That pisses him off because
Don't call me a rat.
he's not a rat. You know, he's one of you, the mice, and he, at that point he snaps and he brings out his little bell, and he,
Ding, ling, 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 ling.
and is it Fluffy? Is that
Fluffy
the name?
or something, yeah.
And that bell calls a big fat cat named Fluffy who comes out of whatever alleyway.
It was very much the Rancor in Star Wars.
For sure.
I mean, Star Wars came out before this too, the Return of the
did.
Jedi, right?
There is a creature. I'm feeding you to my creature. You're done.
Yeah, he rings this bell. Fluffy comes out and he feeds this mouse that calls Ratigan a rat, and it dies in front of everyone.
Yeah,
and
it
it
just
gets eaten alive.
And I do think that there's like a good metaphor here in this scene because he doesn't want to be called a rat; he wants to be called a mouse. But it's like, what's the old saying? Like, there's always a rat amongst us.
Yeah.
And so, like, it does create that. There's always someone who wants to upset the norms,
yeah,
so to speak, for their own personal gain. But I think we get his plan right during that scene.
Yeah, he's trying to He's trying to infiltrate the
Buckingham Palace.
so he can become the supreme ruler of all mousedom, is what he said.
The supreme mouse ruler.
all
The mouse
mousedom.
queen, I think, is what she was.
Mouse. I mean, honestly.
So that's his plan now, and it's starting to kind of come together. And then, Kyle, what happens after that?
Well, we go back to Basil, and they're trying to figure out how to. They're investigating something, but then they're interrupted. Right?
Don't they find that bat's hat?
The bat hat.
Don't they find the bat hat?
I think they find it,
And
and
they
then they
give
go
it
to
to the
investigate it. Yeah. Oh, that's right. They give it to the dog, and the dog sniffs, and they go to the place where it was last known.
Because like Ratigan, he has a relationship with Fluffy. Basil has a relationship with the dog. It's a little yin and yang there.
Which the dog also, I think me and Andrew talked about this. The dog also
looked
mirrored Copper
Yeah.
from The Fox and the
Yeah,
Hound.
it looked
yep,
a little
yep.
similar.
Yeah, so there was a lot of these characters that kind of looked similar or had similar moments, and I know Disney likes to do that with Easter eggs, because there was one scene in this which we'll get to, but Dumbo is just full on in it. But yeah, so like they're using the dog.
What's that dog's name?
I don't.
Toby.
Toby. Yeah.
Toby, what a good
Toby.
name for
Toby.
a dog.
So they're trying to wrangle the dog in. The dog hates
Dawson.
Dawson
For
cannot
whatever-
stand. There's no reason why he hates him. It's just
Dawson's the one he should like. He shouldn't like Basil, but he tries to use the hat to find
The scent of
Toby's
is
trying to
the-
find the scent of Fidget.
That's
Yeah,
the
which
name-
Fidget is the name of the bat
henchman.
the bat creature with the no leg, no wing. It doesn't Toby like
he leads them to like where the bat is living at. And,
toy shop.
Yeah, they go inside and they find.
Now we'll say this toy shop is where I get like a lot of the nightmare fuel.
Yes,
Because the toys that
some
they make.
clowns and dolls that are just really creepy looking.
And they're also like the old early 1900s, 1800s.
It's like really like
1897, so-
grotesque features, very very like vaudevillian, like not fun to look at.
Painted faces.
Probably in lead paint, like just
porcelain.
yeah, just nasty, like really weird looking.
And there's this,
Jack
like-
in the Box and like dolls and clown shit.
And there's these toys where you pull something and it's like a carousel that goes around and around. That's where we see the Dumbo carousel. And then there's one point where they have this little girl porcelain doll with a smile on her face, and she just falls down and her porcelain head just
and her little eye
Bust
kind of
open.
like rolls to the top of her head, and it's pretty. Yeah, as a child, that's probably not a fun scene to see. As an adult, it's just
It was still eerie, but
it was weird, but it wasn't.
it wasn't like, oh no,
Did not live
Let's
up
put
to
the
that
lights on tonight.
childhood feeling.
It didn't, but I thought it was still fun.
Yeah,
Sure,
It was. I thought it was one of the better scenes in the
Yes.
movie. Like it caught my attention, where some of the scenes I kind of just like blend together a little bit.
yes.
But yeah, they catch up to the bat creature, and then I think he just kidnaps Olivia. Right?
he distracts
does.
her. He gets a bubble machine going, and she kind of turns a corner. Turns her back on Basil and Dawson, even though Dawson's been tasked to keep an eye on her at all times. And follows the bubbles and kind of goes up to this little baby carriage, this toy baby carriage, and
That's right.
finds that Fidget is, in there ready to pounce,
Yep.
and grabs her and stuffs her in a bag.
Pretty
and-
scary, yeah.
and just starts running away.
So we did this with Jingle All the Way. How about Fidget's felonies right now? He's got breaking and entering,
Oh man,
kidnapping, holding someone against their will.
abuse of a child.
I mean, he is the henchman of a
assault.
super criminal
Assault.
of the underworld. So, his rap sheet should be long.
Right.
You know?
Definitely some drug charges in there,
For
too.
sure. The way he speaks, that he's very much
He's
into drugs.
He's kind of a gremlin-like bat.
Yeah.
Like he reminds me of Stripe from the Gremlins.
Yep.
I don't. Those movies were probably made around the same time, so I don't. I know what Gremlins was 85, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So they're probably no relation there, but it's a very similar character. Kind of like the bat from Anastasia a little bit too. But after she's kidnapped, she's brought back to.
Well, he gets away. Fidget gets away. Basil and Dawson can't get to him. But
Worst detective in the world.
But
He's bad.
important little piece that we need to mention is we find Fidget's like to-do list. that is given
Oh,
to
yeah.
him from Ratigan. And it's like, abduct the girl. I don't remember what it said on there, but
It's basically step-by-step instructions on
Yes.
how
Yeah.
we're going to accomplish our plan.
it's pretty much.
And a big the list is huge. It's like as big as a fidget is.
But Dawson finds it, and Basil's like, "Oh my goodness, this is everything we need." Ah, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't remember what happens after that.
Yeah,
but
let's go ahead and break the spoiler here. Basil does nothing in this to solve anything.
I was gonna say that the reason why you haven't heard us talk about him too much is because he's not really driving the plot. It's the villains that are. He's not really trying to investigate anything necessarily. He is, but like things just kind of happen while they're there.
And
There's no great mystery.
he does have one moment of quote brilliance, but I think it's more luck than anything. But
Probably.
he's full of
And
shit.
Dawson, Dawson discovered the list. And
Yeah.
at first he starts gaslighting Dawson and saying that's not something we need. And then I think he actually reads the list.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, this is everything. I'm a great detective. La, 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 la. I don't know, like, they find this list, and I remember thinking in my head, like, well, the list is not going to lead you to where they are.
no.
But somehow it led them to where they...
where they were keeping everybody, which
Yeah.
is the abandoned keg.
And so I still don't really understand it, and maybe I'm missing something. Do you remember, Andrew?
Yes, we'll get there in a second. I think we have to. The focus goes towards Ratigan and Fidget and Olivia and Mr. Flaversham or whatever, the toy maker.
Yeah.
Because she's introduced to him like on a whim. He's hard at work creating this device. And Ratigan is like, "Oh, look, here's your daughter. Happy reunion."
I'm going to put her head on a pike.
Yeah. And, he allows them to have a moment of like hugging and embracing and just, a little refresher. But then he's like, "All right, girl's mine. Get back to work." And they go and shove her in a glass bottle and cork it.
Which
So
is
she's
gonna
running
kill
out of
her.
oxygen.
Yeah.
She has maybe 5 minutes to live.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And I think that's pretty much it.
Did Toby smell the list and lead him there? I don't know. I
think so.
No, so
blacked out.
let's hope so.
So we're back in Basil's home on Baker Street, and he gives a whiff of the paper. He's like, "That's a peculiar smell."
Yeah, I do remember
And
now.
he does some sort of like experiment to discover that there's a large trace of sodium chloride in this parchment, this paper that he has found, which leads him to believe.
I'm glad Andrew was paying attention, and me and Kyle do not remember this.
I don't remember.
But it's a big stretch. It leads him to believe that this comes from a bar down by the River Thames because it is a brackish, body of water. There is salt water in that
and
that
Andrew
river.
looked it up to confirm. Me and Kyle at first did not believe that this was a...
I didn't either. All three of us didn't
thought
think
it was freshwater river, and I guess that's the reason we blacked out on this, and then we found out that we were dumb. Or not dumb, I guess ignorant.
Why would
ill-informed.
Ill-informed.
Why would we guess that an inland river would be saltwater? Is the Mississippi saltwater in Missouri?
Well, no. Okay, no, but at certain points it is in the Delta, the Mississippi River Delta.
Of course, but London is in the center of England in a
Yeah, but
sense.
also think about how much smaller
I grew
that
up on
place
the-
is in comparison to how big.
I grew up
I
on the
guess.
Tennessee River. I can say that there's enough pollution in that water that you don't know what you're
and
going to find.
the Thames is disgusting, so you don't really think of it as, carrying
How
salt.
far is London from the ocean?
Oh, a few hours. It's not like terribly far, but it's a couple hours. I would imagine.
It's far enough up there that I was like, okay, well, yeah.
We are stupid for not really thinking that through, but
No, I mean-
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I don't know England's geography as well as our our own country, so sue me.
So, he instantly finds the bar, too. Like, there was only one bar.
And it's a seedy establishment full of thieves.
I mean, it looked fun
and-
to me.
It did,
So they get in there, and
motley crew of characters.
they dress up, too. They don't just go in looking like themselves. Like, they have to wear a disguise, because they're like, he's like, Dawson, we have to be basically seedy like these individuals. And so Basil dresses like Vincent Price.
Yes, he does.
He puts the Vincent Price mustache on, which I love that touch. I think that's a lot of fun.
Most people would miss that when they're,
Look
they're
right over it.
kids. Of course, I mean, I don't think.
I mean,
kid
me
would
being
catch that.
me being a Vincent Price fan now as an adult, like,
Yes.
as a kid,
No, not at all.
no way in hell I knew what that was.
So just a little nugget they threw in there for
and
fun.
which they refresh it later. But they get in this bar, and this singer comes up, and she starts serenading the audience.
yeah.
And some of the henchmen notice that Basil and Dawson are there.
Yeah.
And they can kind of tell.
Because Basil goes up to one of the barmaids, is like, "Do you know of a fellow named Ratigan?" And she's like stupefied. She's like, "What?
No one asked for Ratigan, yeah.
I don't know the name." Clearly lying, and that sounds off the alarms.
Yeah, and then so she tells some of the henchmen, and the henchmen are like, that's got to be Basil. He's looking for Ratigan. But then this one mouse goes up and starts singing,
And she's kind of like a burlesque dancer. Like
Yeah,
it's risque.
yeah,
It's a trio of them. There's one that's in blue get up, and there's the two other that are in pink, and whole song and dance, very risque, very
and they slip like some. I'm not gonna say poison, but they slip
It's something nefarious.
in the drinks, and Basil smells it. He's like, "Don't drink," and he looks over at Dawson.
Dawson's
Dawson's
just
like,
chugged it.
housed it.
Yeah.
It's just instantly, like 3, 2, 1, drunk.
done.
Yeah, and so it's not even poison. It's not like
You know that he can handle his alcohol. Look
yeah,
at him.
because he
He's a
like
poor fella.
wears off
Yeah.
like in a matter of seconds. Honestly, like minutes later.
He's Rubenesque, but like he can.
Yeah. So what happens next, Kyle?
Well, she sings her whole song and dance, and this is kind of where we get into like, this is one of the reasons why I have a trouble with this movie. Like, is this a musical movie?
There's only two musical numbers.
Yeah, so that's
But Disney did that all the time. They did that in Robin Hood. They did that in The Rescuers. Like that is so.
Did
common.
they do it in Rescuers? I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure they did. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I wouldn't classify it as a musical, but there's
No.
always like
there's a song and dance.
to every. I mean, Mulan had
Yeah, well, that is a movie musical, but
kinda. Yeah, I mean, but it's hard. Like it's on the cusp, right? Like you wouldn't classify this movie as an actual musical, but it does have like too long. It's an hour and 14-minute
yeah,
movie.
Rescuers is a musical comedy drama film, so I would imagine there is a like song and dance number in there as well. That's
Yeah.
that's a very Disney
Common-
thing. It
common
didn't bother me. I expected that. Hell, you saw it in Brave Little Toaster, which is not far off from this either. Like,
Yeah.
that shit happens. So I expected that.
I don't know. I just wanted them to shit or get off the pot. I wanted it to be like, are we actually gonna do a musical, or are we just gonna interlude a couple ones in here?
So, and that's where I'm with you though, because I like the musical numbers.
they were good. No, it's not like they were bad. To be very clear, they're not
it's
bad.
Just, we had 2 of them.
Yeah.
I wanted more. I wanted either more or
Not at all.
none.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
But like, to be very fair, they're not. They're catchy tunes. They're well written. They're well performed.
and the little musical numbers are fun. Like to watch the characters and like in it, and, like interact. The Ratigan song was really fun.
It was a very fun
was.
song.
But then you only have 2 of these numbers in the whole film.
Yeah,
It
a
felt
very
like
short film.
and an hour and 14 minutes. It felt like a missed opportunity.
Hour and like 5, really. But
Yeah.
But anyways,
you could have had one more. You could have had a third one,
Yeah.
and it would have been better.
anyways, they the whole song and dance ends. There's a huge like bar fight because someone says the wrong thing to someone. Someone accidentally like steps on someone's foot, and people fucking flip their shit. And at this point, Basil
It is a full brawl in this place.
Basil sees an opportunity because he thinks he's figured out where the door to Ratigan's secret lair is, and sure enough, it's a trap door behind the bar. They go down, and mind you, Fidget has already been spotted in this bar a few minutes prior, so they know he's around somewhere. And I think Basil sees him, goes down this trap door a few minutes earlier. He makes his way back there. Him and Dawson go down. They follow Fidget through this like pipe. Granted, they're in like the sewers and the underworld of the human world in a sense. So they go down a pipe, and then that pipe leads them to Ratigan's lair, right? And they see the bottle, and they think that the little body that's lying in there is Olivia.
Because they see this
Olivia's
figure
clothes.
in the clothes, yeah.
And they go to open it up, and sure enough, it's Fidget. And then, boom, everyone comes out of the woodworks. Ratigan drops this huge, what'd you call it? What would you call that? It's not a poster, but it says, like, welcome Basil or something like that.
Yeah.
What is the noun that I'm trying to use here? It's not a poster. It's a
like a banner.
banner. There you
Yeah.
go. It's a giant banner.
So they set a trap for him.
Yeah.
And now, one of the only funny things I laughed at is then they put them both on mouse traps.
Yep, and tied him down.
Tied him down onto
mouse
mouse traps, and he's just like, I tried to think of the ways that I was going to exterminate your life, And I couldn't come up with any, so I said, "Why not all of them?" And he like flips on the lights, and he has
It's
like
like this whole
axe.
Goldberg machine.
Yeah, it's
that's
like
set
a
up.
gun.
Completely inefficient, dumb bullshit. He could just end their lives right there.
Yeah, there's like a what like a gun and axe.
So,
There's like a little Derringer.
He has
There's
a record player, a needle playing, and the string is attached to that. So the further the needle moves on the
total
record,
James Bond.
pulls the string, which then pulls the metal marble that rolls down, knocks something over, and it's like an axe, a gun, and an arrow, and it all hits at once.
And the arrow's like poison dart,
and like
arrow.
a giant anvil too.
Yeah, it's like the anvil was going to be the coup de grace.
Yeah. So they were
Splat.
supposed to, be splatted by the mousetrap, but then squished and pierced and shot. And,
Yeah.
Just a little over the top, but
a
like
lot.
it's an animated cartoon. So like again,
That was funny. I laughed at that.
I thought it was funny, too.
Yeah, and like it's a callback to James Bond and things like that. Kyle, how did they get out of this trap?
They time it just right while Basil's doing some math equations in his head.
this is the only thing that Basil does.
Yeah, that
essentially.
saves everybody. Is they're all going down, like the barbel's rolling down to trigger the mousetrap to decapitate them first of all, and then get shot after that. Essentially, just get lucky because the ball just like he times it just right to like trigger the mousetrap beforehand, while the marble's coming down, that it hits the marble instead of their heads, and it saves them somehow.
And then the axe falls down and cuts them down right in the middle, so they're separated on their mousetrap.
But I will go back and say they were tied next to each other. They were shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
That axe is getting them. They weren't separated
No,
when they were tied down.
One of them's dead at least.
Yeah, or they're both
Missing a limb.
named. Yeah. Somehow it cuts it straight through and clean, and the anvil comes down, and they're able to get out of the way, and now they're free and ready to go after the daughter.
But at this point, Olivia, the daughter, Ratigan, and Fidget are on their little getaway machine, which is like it's
A
a
blimp
It's a
with
little
a
blimp.
bike, and
Yeah.
and what's funny about it is you have a flying creature, Fidget, over there pedaling the blimp, which was also funny. Like this whole scene is pretty funny, but like
So they raft together fucking 3 balloons in a tarp and then put it on a matchbox or something, and then they shoot off after them in this makeshift balloon that they're
Right.
like letting the air out of one of them to propel themselves.
flying
And they're-
through the sky of London.
and they're heading to Buckingham Palace.
Well, but then they get stopped at Big Ben though.
Yeah.
So this is where the whole climax happens, and
No, they go to the
Yeah,
palace.
they head to
oh, that's right. No, they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So
they do.
so they get to Buckingham Palace, and they meet up with the Queen.
They abduct her. A
Yeah.
sense,
So and what's funny is they
imprison her.
the guards out front are watching, and then you see them get like beaten up, and the henchmen are putting on their clothes.
Yeah.
So as they come in, she doesn't realize that her staff has made a complete change.
no, she doesn't understand that these aren't her actual soldiers that are supposed to be helping her out.
And they all are toothless and like
Yeah, they're like, they smell of alcohol and cheap cologne.
and they should have blood splatter all over the uniforms. But anyway, then Ratigan comes up, and they basically abduct her, and
They tie her up, and
that's when you find out the invention is a mechanical
version
of the Queen. And it's
there's-
horrifying.
It's
Yeah.
really scary, and
It's like
she's
twitching and catching on fire. It's like a Teddy Ruxpin.
it's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So they're trying to dispose of the Queen so that they can have this effigy of her. Just literally say, it's okay that Ratigan is your leader now. Ratigan is the leader. He is the leader. Ratigan is the leader.
Supreme mouse chief. Or
Isn't
mouse
this how
king or
Stalin
whatever.
got in power?
That and a couple million murders.
And then, you might be asking, how is an animatronic going to talk to the people? Well, there's some sort of like sound device, where Flaversham, the toy maker, like talks into this gramophone that projects as the Queen's voice.
with a slight hum and ring in it.
yeah, it's
Like-
not exactly her voice, but I guess the
But it's
mouse
close
people
enough.
are dumb enough to believe it.
It's close enough.
People will vote for any.
Yeah, at that point, the animatronic Queen is addressing the people, and she gives, Ratigan the chief title, and you hear the gasp in the audience, and then I don't remember what happens after this? But this is when things start to
Unravel quickly.
because at this point Basil and Dawson are freed, and like
They make it over there, and as the queen's giving her speech to all of Mousedon or Mousetun or Lun Mouse or whatever we're calling it.
Mouse lung.
Mouse lung.
Flaversham is back there. Well, he's got guns on him as he's like giving the speech
That's
through
right.
the
That's right.
the. It looks like a monophone. It's weird. Basil shows up, takes out the guards, and this is backstage. They don't see it, and he starts talking for the queen and saying just ill things about Ratigan.
And then she says, rat.
Yeah, and calls him a rat, and he freaks out, and then that's when the queen comes out, and Ratigan, in this big chaos mess, escapes back on his balloon, and they go after him on the same kind of flight that they took to Buckingham. They're taking
There's
away.
a little more rinky-dink.
Yeah, there's still the balloon kind of thing. And then they make it, and what happens next, Andrew? We're getting to the climax of everything.
They're on their way to Big Ben.
Yeah.
I know that what's his name? Fidget gets thrown out on their little blimp. He's like, we need to get rid of dead weight. He doesn't, and Ratigan's like, oh, dead weight. Well, I think you'll do, and he just tosses him over the top. And
But
a
he
bat who should be able to fly
Cannot.
and
Yeah,
just
he's missing a leg, and
falls into the water below, and I guess he perished.
yeah, he falls, and then they're able to make it to the clock tower.
Yep.
And then you have
This is where shit starts getting crazy.
they make it into the clock, so it punctures a hole in the clock. So they're inside the clock, and Basil was able to knock their aircraft through it.
Yeah.
And then now they're getting into a fight in the clock tower. And then this is where the clock animation, the gears and everything, which is CGI, but it
Still looks good.
It was
look
a
good. It still looks
crazy looking scene, and it's definitely kind of one of those trancey scenes. It looks like it would be in a Pink Floyd music video.
Yes.
And they start getting into a fight, and they end up back outside the clock tower, right? Like they're hanging on to the hands of the clock. And what happens next, Kyle?
So now we start having the big fight between Basil and Ratigan. And Ratigan starts his clothes start peeling off, and he becomes more and more like a rat, if he wasn't already. He's kind of hulking and scary and big.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a Hunchback of Notre Dame and Jekyll and Hyde.
There's a lot of different things you could draw, parallels you could draw. And it is. I mean, as a kid, yeah, it was a pretty scary scene because he's kicking the shit out of Basil. Basil is
and he
not
looks
doing very well.
horrifying now.
Yeah, he as a kid, yes. Looking last night when we
It
watched this,
scared me when I was a
It
kid.
did not scare me at all last night.
Not
It's
last night,
very-
but-
it just wasn't. I mean, there were scarier parts of that movie, like the bat. Numerous times the bat was there. Fidget. That was truly But Ratigan, they missed. In my opinion, as an adult looking back on this, they missed the mark on this, and it was still high stakes, really high stakes. They're battling on the clock, and they make their way outside into the clock hands. And this is where stuff starts getting weird and wonky. And what actually happens that leads to Ratigan falling off of the clock?
He's holding on to the hand, and it turns
right.
midnight.
Midnights.
Yeah, and then he falls and he grabs onto what's his face, to Basil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he pulls them down, and they start falling.
Because
and
Basil's
that
on
was
this
it.
little aircraft thing, and they start falling, and they both fall to their death basically until the little girl and Dawson are hanging on to their little aircraft thing and watching all this happen. And then all of a sudden, you see through the cloud of smoke, you hear Basil had his little bicycle
so
aircraft.
So okay, I didn't want to say anything, but I'm gonna say it because it kind of pissed me off. Because do you know why helicopters make that sound? That do you know why they make that sound? Because the ends of the blades are traveling faster than the speed of sound. They're breaking the sound barrier. So unless you're sitting here telling me that Basil was generating enough force from his tiny little mouse legs to propel that thing faster than the speed of sound around the tips of its little propeller, I'm gonna go ahead and call horse shit on that. But it's a kids movie,
animated movie,
but it still pissed me off.
So like,
it's still I'm allowed to be pissed off about one thing in this.
What did you think? Did you think he was going to ride a Black Hawk?
I thought he was gonna be like bow now, bow now, bow now, bow now.
Here comes Basil in his Apache helicopter.
Just I thought we were gonna play favorite song or something. Like it just.
hey,
as a kid, sure, that makes total sense.
Hey, we shit on him, Basil, quite a bit, but three redeeming moments. He got them out of the hole.
He did.
You know, what do you even call that death trap he was put in? A death trap, I guess, with Ratigan.
I think that's the best.
He saved Olivia from Ratigan in the clock tower. She almost got squished by one of the gears. And then at the last minute, he was able to somehow put together some sort of flying apparatus
in the air
while free falling. So, like, I guess that's impressive for fucking mouse.
To be fair, they're on Big Ben. That would have been a long fall for a rat or a mouse. That would
the equivalent for us. I mean, that would be
flying like from the stratosphere,
from
probably.
like a plane or something.
I don't know.
Just might as well not even worry about it. It's so high.
Yeah, you're gonna.
It's so high.
You've got a lot of time to think before you hit the ground.
Yeah.
But to sum it all up, they end back at Baker Street, right?
At Basil's residence, and
it looks like Dawson's gonna hang around. Olivia's found her father, and Basil's on to his next case, and that wraps it up, right? Like,
yeah, Olivia's fine. Mr. Flaversham is fine.
Nobody's lost. There are no stakes lost on their side.
Dawson was leaving, and we have that woman who shows up in tears at Basil's door at the end because she's misplaced her emerald ring. Yeah. And then Basil's like, "Oh, and this is my accomplice, Dr. Dawson." And he was like, "Oh, yes,
that's me.
That is me." And then, of course, the Sherlock Watson connection, I guess, is succinctly made there, and Basil and Dawson are a team, and that is the end. That is it.
That is the Gray Mouse Detective.
Yep.
Pretty little bow.
Andrew, you go first. How do you feel about the Great Mouse Detective?
Off to a good start here.
In terms of adult versus your child expectations.
It happened. I sat there and I watched it, and it unfolded before my eyes. It was fine.
Are you telling me you watched a movie?
Yeah. I don't really feel one way or the other. I don't feel like it was a waste of time. I don't necessarily feel...
It wasn't even that long to waste any time.
It was an hour and maybe 10 minutes. I think the actual runtime is 1:14, but that includes the credits and everything. So
it's like an hour 5.
It was a quick watch. Last night we were tired as shit, but I was ready for it to be over there at the end.
Yeah.
So I could go to sleep, but it was fine. There was not much meat to it. It didn't really pull at my heartstrings like I thought it would, unfortunately. And it did not really rekindle a lot of that nostalgic childhood feeling I had towards it. And that's just putting it plainly. Again, it wasn't horrible, but there wasn't anything truly spectacular about it either. It was just a movie, an animated movie by Disney that I watched when I was a kid. And I rest my case.
Kyle, I'm going to give you plenty of time.
Well, I'm not going to say anything much different because I agree with Andrew, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper and say that it just didn't remind me of when I watched it the first time. There was just a lot of stuff in there that was just, I think I watched this when I was a young enough child to not really need to get more than like, looks scary. I like him. The girl mouse is I feel so sad for her. She's so nice. Like, there's nothing beyond that when you watch it as an adult. And it's very hollow. It's a very hollow movie. There's not anything deeper happening. There's no threads being pulled. There is certainly no, like, greater meaning behind anything. It's just, like, bad man captures person, must get person back. And then that's that. We never got any exposition as to why Ratigan was so bad and mean. We never got any exposition as to why Basil was such a good detective. It was kind of just word of mouth. There was no stories being told. And it was just kind of, it wasn't a waste of time, but like, I'm glad that we can distill this down for y'all because like, we have covered better movies on this podcast. And I'm just going to say that right now. Like, it's not a bad movie, but it's certainly not what I thought it was.
No, this is one of those where it does not match the nostalgia that you had for it.
I agree for the most part. I do think this is one of the rare movies that you'll hear me say needs to be longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't go all in on it.
No.
Like they kind of did a copy and paste Sherlock Holmes story. We talk about all these kids movies and they have enough adult content in it. Because, I mean, as adults, you're taking your children to see these movies. Mm-hmm. So it needs to have something that strikes the balance. This is literally just a kid's movie.
Just a child's
kids movie. Yeah.
Just a kid's movie.
Like just like Teletubbies is a kid's show. This is a kid's movie.
I know why, like, I never watched it with my parents because they would just put it on and let me watch this while my mom cleaned the house or something.
Yes.
There's no
reason
gravity
why
to it, and like I don't think it did anything wrong. I'll stand on that. I think it was fine. Like, it didn't do anything wrong. It kind of, like, to Andrew's point, just kind of exists. And I highly appreciate the animation style.
And some of the, nuggets they threw in there, like the Dumbo and, other things that we talked about. But
they cared about making it. It's just, it's not long enough to develop anything. It's just kind of beat to beat to beat.
I feel like they just kind of mailed this one in.
Yeah,
and maybe they were afraid to do something extravagant. I don't know what the process.
What'd you say the budget was?
$14 million.
That's not even a bad budget for a film like this.
No, it's not. I wonder how much they put into the Black Cauldron. I wonder how much they were handicapped going into this one.
So I did read this movie saved Disney. It atoned for a lot of failures because this was a very popular movie at the time, and it was well received by critics. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me because, like, looking at the legacy of The Great Mouse Detective, it's one that everybody knows. Everybody watched as kids. It came out at a time where Disney was down. This movie kind of brought Disney back. So, in a sense, you have to look at that as, like, a legacy on its own.
Yeah.
And maybe not the content of the movie itself.
Yeah, they didn't make a bad movie. It's just not a good movie. But that's all they had to do to get to the point that they are now. I
think Andrew's onto something. I think this is a movie that exists in that period of time where it's in between the really good of Disney and it's stuck in the muck right before the renaissance of Disney. And so you get kind of these lost in the shuffle movies that everyone thought they were really good at the time, but they were very average movies just compared to a pile of shit.
I want to throw a little factoid in there for you. So the whole spiel that I just gave about potentially having to just work with what they got after the Black Cauldron, I think that holds up because the Black Cauldron's budget, you want to guess what that was?
It was huge.
It's like $45 million.
Which is insane.
Yes, for 85.
80s animation movie.
That's massive.
And that's what we're talking about. Is like that movie almost tanked Disney. And that movie would be interesting to do one day.
We should do that.
But yeah, so I mean,
bring out. So $14 million is
compared,
that's $30 million less essentially.
Yeah,
so they probably had their hands tied. They probably did. They had to work with what they got, and this is what they delivered was an okay movie, a good but not bad movie.
Right.
You know, and I think they mailed it in. I wouldn't say they mailed it in, but they worked with what they had. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then on top of that too, they're working at a time period where animated movies were not very popular.
No,
and they were working against a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
So this movie again probably looked really good on paper in the 80s and even in the 90s when we were watching it. But there's a reason that you haven't watched it since the mid 90s.
Yep.
And this is the reason.
Yeah. There's not much meat to it.
Not at all.
So
it's very much like the sides of Thanksgiving and not the actual meal.
Right. Yeah. It's absolutely what it is. Andrew, does it hold up?
I think it does. This is not one that I would go and watch 6 months from now.
I'm probably good with that one viewing.
Yeah, this is one that I'll probably hold on to and show my kids if I have kids one day. You know, that'll be the next time I probably see it. You know, like I said, it's just there. I don't feel like it was a waste of time, but it didn't really give much to me. But I do think it holds up with when you consider everything in terms of their handicap budget and, you know, the graphics and animation for the time and
what it did for Disney.
What it did for Disney.
I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
And again, I don't think it's that great of a story. it's a little void there, but yeah, it holds up. There are other movies that we have done that are better, but there's other movies that we have done that are far worse from this.
It's very middle ground.
Yeah, I'm not going to harp too much, and that is what it is. Yeah. But it holds up.
Kyle.
It does not hold up. Unfortunately,
I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me in terms of like I watched this as a child. I should feel something about it still, not the same thing, but feel something about it. I'd be fine if I never saw that movie again. There's just nothing to it. There's no more deeper. And again, we're spoiled because, I mean, Disney and Pixar stuff after that happened was really, I mean, like it's really good. Like Disney Pixar really kind of like did everything right. So I think maybe because we're spoiled, maybe because we're so used to getting good Disney and good kids material, it doesn't hold up. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm weird, man. I'm torn on the fence on this one. I want to say it holds up because of what it did for Disney, but in my own personal opinion, like my own collection, I would say it doesn't. Being an hour, 14 minutes, it is so short. It's one of those movies that just kind of came and went. It's so short. There's not a whole lot of meat to the bone. It's one you can skip from your childhood. And I would say it doesn't hold up because if you watch it now, I don't think you're going to have like if you have a full nostalgia view of it, it's going to kind of like
disappoint
it,
you.
it may wash it down.
It will disappoint you. It's not. I would just leave it in the back of your head where it is. Maybe watch a trailer to kind of remember what the animation looks like.
I don't want to say disappoint. I think unfulfilled, but like I didn't.
Sure, that's a better way to say it.
I didn't leave like thinking like, oh shit, that was not what I expected. It was just like, oh, that wasn't quite what I thought I'd cracked it up to be. But
so we're sitting here on our vote. I'm like, it holds up because of what it did for Disney, but it doesn't hold up in my personal opinion. So it's like me split. Kyle says no. Andrew says yes. So I think this is the first one where we're kind of 50-50 on. It's going to hold up to some people, maybe.
Yeah, I think it absolutely will.
So this one's a hard one to judge. But again, it's an hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I think it's worth your attention to see how you feel about it.
I don't feel comfortable recommending that to people just because there are better movies we could have watched. At the end of the day, this is why we're doing it though, is to tell y'all who are listening, like I'm gonna be honest with you, friends. Like it's not Batman and Robin, so I'm not gonna give it like
it's not Godzilla.
It's not Godzilla, but like,
honestly, might have been better than Jungle to Jungle too. So
I don't know. I like Jungle to Jungle quite a bit. I thought that was a good movie.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, like it was just
it had a better story. There was definitely more dynamic.
It was a lot more dynamicism. Like the art in it, I appreciated a little bit more. But again, like we're comparing something made in Disney's like,
shit years,
very not great years, and it was a shining point of those years, and we got to give it credit for that for sure. However, I just don't think it's worth a rewatch.
Yeah,
my opinion.
Well, there you heard it. The convoluted mess of we don't know. Well, Kyle knows, but before we get out of here, I think we're going to do some IMDb scores, and I think we're going to see this one as a nostalgia juice on IMDb. I haven't looked it up, but I know what it is. Feeling. Kyle, do you want to take a guess? Andrew knows. Kyle, do you want to take a guess?
IMDb?
On what it does on IMDb.
No more than a 6. I'm going to say it's going to get like a 6.4
on IMDb.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be in the 7s.
Give yours, Kyle.
What I think?
Yeah,
I would give it like a 6 flat. I think.
Oh, that's higher than I thought you'd give it.
It's not a failing. Just because I don't think it holds up doesn't mean it's not a good movie. I just don't think it's worth a rewatch.
Yeah.
It's good for a child.
Yeah.
It's a good one to have on your to keep for your children. As an adult, there's no reason to watch this movie.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to give it a 6.1. That's kind of what I said. It was 6.2, 6.1. I'm giving it a 6.1.
As I give it a 5.8 for all the imagination. But I'm going to say that it's at a 7.2 on IMDb. I'm going to say it's high.
What do you think, Kyle? You said 6
IMDb? I think they're at it. I said 6.4.
It is a 7.1.
Wow. Right in the middle.
So a full point above what I said.
I knew it was going to be high.
Yeah. It's not a 7.1.
Yeah, it's not.
It's just not. There's not enough happening in that movie for it to be.
But watch this be like what ends us. Watch there be like a mob outside your apartment right now.
Like we missed all the subliminal messaging.
Of the people who are listening to this.
12. We're at 12
me,
people
sorry.
now. Well, that's about it. You know what we do now? We reach into your childhood nostalgia, pull the movies from your past out. We just pulled out The Great Mouse Detective, and we found out we don't really know. It's 50-50. Kyle says no. Andrew says yes. I'm torn down the middle. So maybe decide for yourself. Just remember one thing. Nostalgia is a dangerous game.